in the United States, and they should switch a little bit. So before I really get started, I just want to make sure that you guys are okay with me recording this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So right now in the United States, our recidivism rate is 77%, which basically means like 5 years after people leave prison, 77% of them go back in. That's super high compared to other countries like Norway. It's as low as 20%. So like our methods are totally different too. We have really punitive method, and theirs is more rehabilitative. So our prisoners come out and they have a stigma on them. They have no skills. And like, it's hard, I know, to feel bad for like a drug dealer or something, but in reality, a lot of them aren't violent. They're not really hurting if it's like marijuana, whatever, anyone else. So they're coming out and you have to think of why they're selling those drugs. It might be to put food on the table for their family, which is like still not an excuse at all. But we're kind of using them as like objects in our prison as a business, and that's not okay. So Thomas Lynn and John Stark did a documentary called Breaking the Cycle, and it's about prisons in Norway compared to maximum security prisons in New York. So there was a lot of testimonials in it, which was really powerful from the prisoners. They were upset in the United States because to go to the bathroom, all they have is like a sheet over their cell, and they still have to be seen by the prison guards. So like that's pretty inhumane. And then they asked the prisoners like what would be like a dream prison, I guess, if you will. And they're not talking about like serving salmon for dinner or like having their dogs in their cells or anything like that. Basically all they wanted was like a campus style prison with like vocational training and educational training. So they could come out and have skills and they wouldn't feel the need to do bad things to make money to get put back into jail. So some people will say this is like a culture thing. Norway is way more socialist than us. They have free healthcare, they have free college, everything like that. But this can be argued against because places in the United States have tried it as well. A prison in West Virginia, Dr. Gordon and Dr. Weldon did a study on it, and they published it in the Journal of Correctional Education. So they split the prisoners into 3 groups. First group received no training, and their recidivism rate was 26%. One group received just vocational training, and their recidivism rate dropped down to 8.75%. And then if they received both education and vocational, it dropped down to 6.71%. So that's a 20% difference, which is pretty crazy. And so the second problem people tend to think of is funding. Like, where are we going to find the money to pay for this? And I myself, like, I personally don't really enjoy taxes. I obviously know that they have to like happen for the country to run, but I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of an unfair situation. But anyways, I do think though, if we spend more money up front, funding these rehabilitative methods instead, we'll pay less in the long run because we're not going to be paying $40,000 per inmate per year to go back to prison every 5 years. And we see this over and over again. There was another study in Virginia done by actually, I don't know which doctor, sorry, but it was also published in the Journal of Correctional Education. And they too found a strong correlation, positive correlation with rehabilitative measures such as vocational training and then post-release integration back into society. This doesn't just happen with adults, but it happens with kids too. So we have a huge juvenile detention body, I guess, in our country. And it's really scary because if you think about it, these kids are going to come out, and if they're going to be full of stigma, hate themselves, not have any skills, miss out on their high school or elementary school, but if you will, education, they're going to come out and they're going to be full of hate and anger. And that would be a scary, scary place for our country to be in if we have these kids running our country and there are doctors. You know, there could be a beautiful and smart mind in the brain of any of those kids, and because maybe they were brought up in the wrong environment, something like that, they ended up in juvenile delinquent centers. And the cycle will ultimately just keep going if that's the case. So if the Department of Justice focuses on anything with this, it's that they help our kids make sure that they are rehabilitated rather than like treated like huge criminals. So yeah, if they decrease the stigma, they're more likely to get jobs and be in society. And policy groups have already started this. There's the post-release employment plan. They call themselves PrEP. So they're spoken about in the Correctional Management Quarterly, which is like a journal, scholarly journal. And so they put 7,000 inmates through vocational training, and they too saw a 14% drop in recidivism rates. And it's really interesting because they included in this study that in 1930, the US Congress decided to allow prisoners to work in the prisons because they said, quote, idleness in prisons breeds disorder and aggravates criminal tendencies. So in 1930, Congress knew this was an issue, and still 88 years later, like we haven't taken the steps necessary. So I think the time is now to ask the Department of Justice to kind of think about this, think what can be done, and send it to Congress. So I hope they do that. And I have some questions for you guys. Would you guys support this, and why or why not?
I feel like I definitely support it. It reminds me of that Alice Johnson thing that Kim Kardashian did with Donald Trump to get her out for the petty drug crime.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you had more people getting freed for that reason and not having like no options of jobs afterward, then we'd live in a more equal society, but we're still on the way toward that. What is everyone else's opinion?
I definitely agree that rehabilitation inside of prison is definitely a better option, because like being released back into the workforce, there really is like that serious stigma around criminals, and like you don't know what situation led that person to commit crime. So you don't know why they really were in jail, and that isn't necessarily like an entire person's character, and it like ruins your future in the workforce basically. So I would 100% be behind it.
I feel like most crimes are psychological or sociological anyway, and if it is sociological and you're placed in like that kind of dark environment, then you're just making it worse anyway, not really rehabilitating them. And if it's psychological, then if they don't get the right treatment, which I feel like most prisons don't regulate to the most efficiency, then that's not helping either.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I feel like if you treat people like animals, they're going to come out and act like animals.
Definitely. It's like that Jake Paul thing, but we can get into that another time.
Yeah, but in my opinion, like it might a little bit different compared like to the Chinese prison or American prison. I don't have much knowledge of what American looks like, but in Chinese one, we slightly a little bit different, as no matter, it's like our country's government gives like harsher like punishment to like the people going to the prison. So I mean, I don't know. It depends.
I was actually trying to think of, like yesterday, I was wondering what prisons were like around the world too. So I'm really happy you said that. It's kind of insight, that I was looking for.
Yeah, I think prison isn't just like something that needs to be reformed in this country, but most of them. There are definitely some places that do it like more ideal than others. Mm-hmm. Is there like a substitute for prison that you would suggest? Do you think that just plain rehabilitation would work for a criminal?
No, because I feel like they have to be kind of exiled from society for a bit, but I think within the prisons, they should reform. Like I said, instead of having cells, like maybe as the prisoner like shows that he's doing well, he's allowed into more and more buildings via like a card that they can swipe and monitor, stuff like that, or get the privilege of like making the meals maybe for some other prisoners so they can learn how to cook. That's another skill. So I think they should be there, but it should be the facility and the way they go about things.
We should just return to the Australia model and just send all prisoners to one big mass of land.
And just see what happens.
I think it worked just fine the first time.
Something we could try. So I don't know. Do you guys know anyone that has been in prison? If you do want to share and what they think of this.
Oh gosh, I honestly don't think I have much contact with prisoners.
Yeah, I know people that have been to jail.
Yeah, I know. I was like, it's kind of a long
prison. No.
DUI related offenses, maybe.
Yeah, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, nothing crazy.
Like, okay, like we're talking about taxes. Obviously, that's like a big deal, and that's why people obviously haven't like funded something like this. So, how would you guys feel about your taxes going to this rather than going to the same prisoner like 5 times?
I'm pretty sure it's like $23,000 or $24,000 a year that it takes to house one inmate.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna multiply that like times however many people are now going to not return to prison, I definitely think there's like a high payout. Like it's only going to be better by paying for these like rehab programs, because you were gonna like save so much money, and then the rest of the money can be like allocated somewhere else to like outreach programs like after they leave, for like improvement in conditions, or even like out of that particular area of the criminal justice system altogether.
Right, and into something else.
The other element is that if everybody's paying their taxes in order to keep these prisons open and the people who work there to keep their jobs, and then the reformed prisoners come out and aren't able to get a job, then that's kind of counterproductive to capitalism, because then people who should be incentivized to like make more money since they haven't been in jail are paying more money. And the people who have been to jail and should be able to get a job after they've done their time aren't. So it kind of is a circle of the wrong people getting a little not what they deserve.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you guys. I think I'm all set for today.
Anytime. Abby, are you next?
I am.
All right, whenever you're ready.
All right. So today what I want to talk about is I kind of just want to reach out and talk a little bit about the decriminalization of marijuana on like the national scale. More and more countries such as Australia and Amsterdam already practice decriminalization, if not legalization, as well as 31 states in the United States allow medical marijuana, and 9 states, I think it's actually 8 states, including DC, allow the recreational sale. And in order to like understand a little bit more about why marijuana actually is illegal in the first place, and why it's so hard to access like for its medical benefits, and why we had such a mass incarceration, you have to understand that the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 that outlawed the possession, manufacturing, distribution, and sale of thousands of different drugs and put them all into schedules. Marijuana is considered a Schedule I drug, meaning it is highly addictive properties, but no medical use. Cocaine is a Schedule II drug, which is also highly addictive, but has medical properties. So like you would typically think that cocaine is a lot worse of a drug than marijuana. So why is it considered less harmful by the DEA? Back like in the 70s when this act came out, they believed that marijuana like caused hysteria and made people crazy, and so there was a lot of false stigma around it. And then right after the prohibition, there was an announced war on drugs. And then because of that, it caused thousands of mass incarcerations across the entire nation, and a majority of them being disproportionately Latino or Black. There's no like evidence to prove that significantly more Latinos or Blacks use marijuana, but like we see that reflected in the arrest numbers. And then according to a study done by a Boston University professor of economics, Jeffrey Myron. The state of Massachusetts alone recently moved to legalize marijuana, but before they did that, he had done a study funded by one of the governmental agencies to find out how the state would benefit economically by decriminalization, and by multiplying the percentage of inmates in Massachusetts state prisons with the entire criminal justice budget for the state, he found that they would save $24.3 million annually just by moving to decriminalize marijuana. Like, they would save that through different, like the amount it takes in order to pursue the criminals, as well as what it takes to house them. And so by doing that, they would be able to allocate these funds into different places in the state budget, like to schools or roads or outreach programs. And if one state could save that much money in 1 year, how much could our entire country save, especially if we then move to regulate and tax the sale of marijuana? Like, according to an article in Forbes, California, where marijuana is legal for recreational as well as medicinal use, implements a 15% statewide tax on any cannabis product that is purchased in the state for any purpose. And they've generated over $2.75 billion in sales. So it's greatly enhanced the economy of the entire state, as well as other states that have already taken action, like Colorado or Massachusetts. New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer has, over the summer actually, proposed a bill to remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, and that would decriminalize it nationally. This was reported by CNN. This would allow individual states to abide and create their own marijuana rules. So if the individual state voted to continue to make it illegal, then you could be prosecuted at the state level, but not by the federal level for possession. He also proposed to regulate the sale by restricting it to only people above the age of 18, just like just like tobacco or alcohol for people over 21. And then by doing this, you then can tax and regulate, and you also have to include on the label the exact amount of THC or CBD or whatever is contained in the product. That's something that they've implemented in California already. And that way you can also control consumption across everybody. And this bill has already been supported by Vermont Independent Bernie Sanders, Democratic Virginian Senator Tim Kaine, as well as Democratic Senator Tammy Buckworth of Illinois. So things have already been moving in Congress, and there are also many like independent organizations nationwide that are leaders in the movement towards decriminalization, such as the Drug Policy Alliance. They have been one of the moving forces in the legalization across 9 states, and they believe that marijuana should be legal and regulated, just like alcohol or tobacco, while providing access to all of the people that utilize marijuana for medicinal purposes, such as being able to control seizures due to epilepsy, the reduction of pain due to chronic illness, as well as people who are prescribed medical marijuana to reignite their appetite, like for like chemotherapy patients. And they only have the access to this in 31 states. South Carolina is not one of these states. My little brother's best friend is actually epileptic, and he is in any other state where marijuana is legal, he would have access to the medical marijuana in order to control his seizures, but because he lives in South Carolina, they can't. So why is that fair? Does his entire family need to up and move just so he can have access to medicine? I just think that it's obvious that this is a momentum that's been moving not only internationally, but within individual states in our nation, as well as through the American society. It's obvious that the people are pushing towards this. It started and was like a wave. So I think that the next step is to push towards decriminalizing marijuana at the national level in order to profit off of it economically, profit off of it medically. It opens whole new doors for medical research and just to save some of all the like negative that's come from the war on drugs. So what I want to know from you guys is, would you push towards the decriminalization of marijuana and why? Like,
yeah. I absolutely would. I'm from Massachusetts, so I've seen it all happen. They actually just announced they're putting a dispensary in my town. And my town's like 2,500 people, and the town next to me is going to have one too, and it's like another 2,500 people. So really small towns. So I've been around it probably more than a lot of people have. I know kids our age that do it. I know a ton of parents that do it, whatever. But I've seen it help. Like my friend's mom actually just passed away of cancer last Sunday, but it was helping her through it all. So I think it can definitely help medically. And then once again, recreationally, it's kind of like alcohol. You know, people are going to abuse it. People aren't going to abuse it. Or a tanning bed, people are going to abuse that. You know, if you do something every day, it's going to be bad. But anything in moderation, I think, is fine. And then like the only argument people are trying to figure out that I'm curious about is like, it's easy to hand out a DUI because, you know, you have alcohol in your system, you know how much, but no one knows like how they're going to consider like a DUI for marijuana, because it can stay in your system for, is it 3 weeks, I think?
Yeah, stores in your fat cells.
Yeah.
The longer, like the more.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that, but I guess I'll let you guys know. Hopefully I won't, but through the grapevine.
I think I'm definitely gonna support a decriminalize of the marijuana. Before I can do this say, I actually go study abroad in Canada, so which is like legally use marijuana, like especially like medical marijuana. So that's not a problem there at all. So, but like when we come to the state, especially when we talk about the medical level, I believe like. It just shouldn't be the illegal thing said. I don't know what you think.
I think that he has a point. I think that not only should consider decriminalizing it, but at least regulating it, because the whole thing about it causing psychosis is absolutely true in some cases, but not to the way that they were saying it was in the 80s or the 90s. That was all like a racist thing. All the dissent groups that they had during the 70s and 80s, I feel as if I've seen some documentaries on how they just took advantage of certain minorities and used marijuana as a way to take care of them and not have to deal with their nonsense at the time. But I think that anything in excess, especially that affects your dopamine like that, could cause you to have psychosis. But it's not that it should be illegal, because then it gets into the last topic that we talked about with Sam. I don't think that it is a crime that should limit your possibilities as much as like other sorts of crimes, just because everyone who goes to jail has like the same significant decrease in opportunities when they get out.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like what you were saying, like when they racially like targeted people, it kind of like became like more of a stereotype, like for the entire culture.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a stigma, and then it's
exactly like it moved from just like, oh, drugs to like, oh, you associate like African Americans with drugs, or like you associate Latinos with drugs. But do you think that like decriminalization or regulation would help with the issue of not controlled crime, organized crime, like gangs and like drug cartels?
Yeah, it's kind of like all supply and demand. So, but the thing is, it's going to be interesting to see, like, I guess, like the drug market, illegal drug market, like what the prices will do once it's legalized, because it's going to be more expensive. But then at the same time, people are going to like, I wonder if drug dealers are just going to try to sell it for less than like the tax version of it. But I also think the tax version will be more appealing to like older crowds who are scared. You know, there's less of a chance it's going to be laced. You know exactly what it is. And I think part of like why people freak out when they're on marijuana is because like it's your system being like, whoa, what's in this? And it's kind of like psychological. So I think if people know exactly what's in stuff, they'll kind of want to get that and hopefully reduce organized crime.
I think that's part of why they had so much success in California, because
like Colorado too.
Exactly, like by law, it has to be labeled. You have to know exactly what's in whatever you're taking, what the proper dosage is. And that way, like, not only can, like, you could tell someone exactly what you took if anything were to go wrong, but, like, it isn't necessarily, like, a harmful drug, but, like, it's still, you don't know what you got from Joe that you know from so-and-so through so-and-so. So I definitely think that not only, like, it would just be better for the nation as a whole and safer.
Yeah, I agree.
To be regulated and labeled.
We just need to formulate an attack on the pharmaceutical industry now. They're the only ones standing in the way.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
All right. That will be on the next Google Hangout.
All right.
All right.
Good.
I think the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. So the research that I do for the policy is it's about the college policy. I think everyone is familiar with the Carolina Core. Like, I don't know what you guys think about, like, should the school allow the Carolina Core, or they should do some like advice on it. First of all, like, as an international student, I came to the university, and my first year, like freshman year, I did take like several different classes, but now I'm to the sophomore, I get in touch with my major classes. Is business. I guess my earphone is not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for the Carolina Core, the source I look up on the USC website, it shows me there's more than 250 courses that list inside the Carolina Core for all USC students to take in order to graduate. And like, it's not like you have to take like 250 courses, but like there's several like selective. For example, like you have English level, you have math level, and you have like some like arts level. And I know you like take all of you should have took the UNIV 290, which is just a class of like studying what a college, like what USC is. And then like no matter what major you are, like even you are a business student, you have to take, for example, like some historical like class and a bunch of the English class in order to like graduate. And for some like engineering like student, you'll have to take like not only math, science class, but also like languages class. And also I believe like every one of you need to take the second language other than the English as a first language. Since I'm an international student, so I don't need to take, luckily. And also like there's one class I really like struggling with is the linguistic class. as it is supposed to be hard for even like English first speaking students. So for me, like I was just totally like messed up with the class, and added on, I just got a C plus. Whatever, back to the track. And when I reach out to my like old friend, one of them study in the California and Arizona, and also one in Boston. The three schools is like the USC, but like it's the University of the South California, and the ASU, the Arizona State of University, and also the Rock Lake College of the Music. And all three of them like told me they have like some kind of like requirement to graduate. For example, like you need to graduate, you have at least like several level of the math standard or English standard, which is making sense, but they don't have some kind of class you have to take to learn about the school. For example, like the UNIV 290. And also because of that, like some students are suffer from their GPA because they have to take like all different kinds of classes. Like mine as an example, I'm also like suffering. If not taking those classes, my GPA maybe probably be higher. And also like we know like tuition, it depends on like the credit hour you take, and the interstate tuition, I don't know exactly amount, but I think it's like probably a couple thousands per semester. But for out of state and international student, we need to pay like amount average of the 17,000 every semester for taking the class of like 5-6 class up to the 18 credit hours. So I have to like pay like partial of it for the class that I don't want to take, and which is doesn't make sense to us. Like as a student, like in college, we want to like study what we really want to study. It's like a simple topic, but like the first question I want to ask you guys, first, I just want to see like basic what you think about the Carolina Core, and what you think like I should be. Okay, what is the thing you think you can approve of, like up on the Carolina Core itself, like what class should be take off or anything like that?
Wait, yeah, could you hear me before? My microphone is being weird. Or was I just silent?
No, it was silent.
When I put the silent, it works.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of hate the Carolina Core. Like you, I had to take linguistics last semester, and it was horrible. It was actually my class like banded together and wrote about our professor to the dean. That's how bad she was. She was a doctorate student. And classes like that, I feel the same way. I'm like, I am paying thousands of dollars to be here. I think it's important, and I understand the argument. Everyone needs to be well-rounded and kind of get a feel for everything, because just in case your major wasn't what you wanted. But I also think high schools, if our nation sets up high schools correctly, that's supposed to be your time where you kind of figure out what studies you want to go into. And it's the same thing. My boyfriend, his advisor told him he had to take calc for his major, and he took it twice, failed it twice, finally took it a third time, so he got like grade forgiveness twice, and then ended up not needing it. So it's kind of annoying and a waste of thousands of dollars. So yeah, I agree. It's just kind of a waste of money.
Yeah, I understand that it's that the institution trying to make you a more well-rounded student, but that is why we took all the different subjects in high school and grade school. So when we're paying this much money, it shouldn't be classes that are going to bring down our GPA. I don't know. I feel like Carolina Core also kind of wastes like an extra year of our time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially seeing as I switched my major my freshman year when I like started as a pre-pharmacy student, and you don't have to take the Carolina Core. So I took like a bunch of extra classes that I didn't need, and like one I didn't do well in, and so I didn't need it, and now it's just on my GPA. And it's like, wow, I paid for that class. I didn't do well in that class, and it's the only thing it's useful for is my GPA, and it's like hurting it.
It's just like a way for the university to be a business and make money off of us.
Exactly. And like, I do understand the well-rounded thing, but I 100% agree that if the high schools are achieving the job that they're set out to do, which is preparation and well-roundedness, then it shouldn't be necessary to take English 101 in college. Like, you just shouldn't have to do it. Library 101, you should have learned how to do a research paper in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Agree.
Yeah, I think I've learned how to use EBSCO like 800 times. So, anyway, any other questions?
That's probably pretty much. And what about like just at least one class that you don't want to take from the Carolina core? Like pick the number one that you don't want to take, and the reason. Like for myself, it's the UNIV. I've been like talking about it 100 times. Not only about the content is useless, as well as we need to purchase like 2 textbooks, cost like about $200. It's like required for every student who's taking the class, and I basically never look at the book at all.
Yeah, there's so many classes I feel that way about.
Pretty much the one that I was like, forced to take that I'm like kind of happy I did was I had like placed out of the first stat, but then I took stat 201, and it's kind of helpful because it like translates into any like scientific field when you have to read articles and like understand the statistics in it. But other than that, like even my advisor was like the only class that you need that'll make you money in the Carolina core is statistics.
Yeah, I think that's like the same as me. I had 205, and I think it was my first semester of freshman year at 8 a.m. and I couldn't understand the teacher. So not only was the Carolina core, but it was just a nightmare.
I think I got my statistics credit from an AP class, but it took like business calculus in my freshman year. And if you ask me anything about it, I'm not going to know. Like that has nothing to do with my projected field. But I had to take it, I had to pay for it, and I had to show up to LeCon at 8:05 every morning.
Yeah, that was me with European history. It's the worst class I've ever taken.
Latin America. Yeah. A lot.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and start on my topic. So today I'm talking about education reform. First, I'll start by asking, am I clear? Can everybody hear me? Am I echoing?
Mm-mm.
No, sounds fine.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to double check, and everybody's down to listen to my spiel, right?
Yep.
All right, just want to make sure I asked permission. Okay, so I'll start with let's place ourselves in 1865 America, right after the Civil War. The Freedmen's Bureau was established to give property, build schools, and all types of other things for African American citizens after they were added. Real quick, is everybody still on here? Yeah. Okay. So this is a good ideal, I'll say, but the way that it was implemented was very poor. I think that you had a bunch of land given out, but no way of giving these people like a good education, a good way of getting like actual jobs so that they could consistently pay for that land and property afterward or support a family. So that was kind of the beginning to this huge difference in, I guess, a social gap in the United States. I feel like it was always existent. You definitely always had the lower, poor class of white individuals living in the rural areas, while you have the wealthier individuals living in cities and doing the more important medical or political type of jobs. But these and for these African American children that were growing up after the Civil War, they were dealing with just as much discrimination as before. They weren't working on plantations, but they were signing up to go work on plantations in order to be able to make money to help their parents or their siblings, and just to do things that people like us worry about now, trying to pay for school, but only we worry about trying to get a serving job, and they're trying to go back to the horrifying reality of what they were facing before. And then you fast forward about 100 years all the way up to civil rights probably, and you've had almost 100 years of gerrymandering, which is whenever political figures purposely redraw district lines in their states so that they have an increased chance of getting reelected. This was done mostly by conservatives. This information is also coming from my AP United States textbook, so very reliable source. And I think that just kind of added to all the problems. You had all the different civil rights movements besides just the African Americans going on in the 60s and 70s. And like we were talking about earlier, it got into the whole weed argument or marijuana argument slightly. Politicians just really didn't want to deal with these dissenters, and they went out of their way to make their lives more hard than it was. Finally, you get into the 80s and 90s and start to see something called affirmative action. And this was kind of a backwards way of trying to accommodate these individuals, whether they be African American or they're Mexican immigrants or Asian immigrants. It was a way of trying to have every business meet some sort of quota so that there were more opportunities for more than just white America. And it sounds like a good idea if you just glance over it, but whenever you start to really analyze that situation, it's accommodation, but it's not anti-discrimination. When I say that, that means that if it was anti-discriminatory, then instead of giving that opportunity right after school to a certain amount of each race so that it's at businesses' discretions, then instead you would put equal amount of funding into all different kinds of schools in rural areas and minority neighborhoods, not just the bigger city schools like it is mostly set up even in this day and age. Because if everybody received the same amount of quality education and that the government did their job correctly offering that, then you wouldn't have to worry about meeting a quota. You would have the people who actually wanted to succeed going into the professions and doing a good job because they worked hard to get to that point and they actually care about what they're trying to do and add themselves into the United States' economy. Another thing I was going to talk about was there was a scientific study done in 2001. I don't know if in y'all's middle school or high school you had some college students come in and kind of mentor some of the students. That happened in my elementary school and middle school, and I think some ninth graders in high school. But these individuals in this study did the same thing, but they did it in a lower income neighborhood in one of their middle schools. It was a majority of African Americans that attended that school, and they kind of just observed the feelings and like the kind of way of thinking that everyone in that school had. And they learned that whenever, especially in history class, like, of course, you're going to go around, you're going to hear stereotypes about a certain sex or a certain race. And I feel as if it's something that's kind of hard to ignore, but most people do it anyways. But then once you get into history and start learning about the past of the United States, it's never in a negative reflection. It's always kind of trying to put this country in the most positive light possible. Whenever Pearl Harbor happened and all the Japanese individuals were put into internment camps in California, I don't remember that being taught in a way where it was the fault of the American people for doing that to that minority. It was more of like a safe caution or something that was necessary to be done to protect the majority of lives in the country, whenever in reality that's just very indirectly racist. And I feel as if those types of patterns have happened since the founding of this country, whether it was the Trail of Tears moving the Native Americans out west, the way we treated African Americans repetitively over the last 200 years or 300 years. And whenever people in the middle school age range are learning about this, I don't think that they've reached the maturity level necessarily to kind of look at it from all the different angles like we do now. So it just kind of adds to increasing rates of racism and tension, and getting away from any progress of trying to get equal education or like equality between people, which is, I feel like, what we want to do as a nation, what we've wanted for a while. So hopefully we can try to shed some more light on this. I think that the Department of Education should really consider giving more funding or reappropriating some funds into lower income schools, and just to see how much more effort is put in by those students, if they really actually don't care, or if they only didn't care because the teachers didn't have the kind of funding to make it a fun learning experience for all. So I guess we shall see. What is everyone's opinion?
I know that at like my high school, or I guess our high school, they did like a program where they like had iPads, and it was like certain teachers that taught like the higher risk students like would be able to like have iPads. So it was like, I guess, considered like an incentive of like, you come to class, like you get to like play around on an iPad instead of like doing work, I guess, because it's like still work, but it's like perceived as more fun, or like, I guess, almost like an incentive of coming and showing up. So I definitely think that if that can happen in like a regular high school, I mean, I definitely don't think our high school is a low income high school. So no, yeah, if that can happen in like a regular high school, then like I feel like in low income areas where I guess like you could say like objects, like material objects like that, or like nice computers, or like good school lunches, like these like random small things, like kind of like would add up to where they'd be like, oh, like we're gonna get to play on the computers at school today. Like they would be like excited to go, like maybe more excited to learn and like unlock their potential, as opposed to doing like worksheets, because like who wants to do that?
Yeah, that's definitely a negative way of trying to push kids to be motivated in doing their work if they're just working on worksheets all day long.
Yeah, and I think like if you allocate more money to low-income schools, I think it all stems from the teachers as well, because if you have a great teacher, she can do something with materials of low cost. But when a teacher is barely getting paid because that school district doesn't have any money, like what is her incentive? Like it shouldn't be that way. People in education should want to help kids. But she's dealing with kids that probably don't have all the best behavior because they don't have best role models at home, stuff like that. Then she's just going to go home every day and just lose her motivation to work hard for the kids. And that's sad. So I think if money is a motivation, we can't deny it. If she or he is getting paid more, then I think they'll help as well.
Yeah, I agree with like what she said is the more important material of the education is like depends on the teacher. Not no matter like elementary or middle high or high school, even college about the professor. Like for myself, I did like went to a private school, and we all require everyone to get like some kind of like iPad or like laptop. But that's only used for study. Like, but students are still using it for playing game. So I mean, it just depends like on the students and the teacher. Like,
yeah, both sides have to be motivated to keep learning, but if they have that idea kind of instilled in their head right at the beginning when they start grade school, then maybe attitudes would be a little better than they would be if you introduce it later when they have already stopped caring and they're just going to play games anyway. But I just think that if we live in a capitalist country, I know it's like a social idea, but you would improve efficiency because I feel as if race and sex shouldn't be the limiting factors of whether you're going to be successful or not. It should be merits. And if you fix the issue of certain minorities not having the same opportunities from the beginning, and then you would start to see like all different sorts of people with different backgrounds having the same high level of merits, and then you would have more output from businesses and hopefully like improve the economy and all those things, and then get back to increasing capitalism. So I think there should be a balance of everything.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, it was great talking to everyone today. Is there anything else we forgot? Does anyone have any last comments?
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we knocked